Peppa Pig, the numbers. Peppa woke up early. George was still sleeping, gently snoring. She walked down to the kitchen, and then she saw it. Right in front of the door, on the floor, there was a white chalk number. 1. Neat, perfectly written. Peppa frowned. "George, did you do this?" she asked later. George only shrugged. "Dinosaur can't write." Daddy Pig wiped it away with a cloth. "Probably just some silly game," he said. The next morning, a new number, 2nd, same place. Again, neatly drawn in white chalk. This time, Mummy Pig seemed more puzzled. "That's strange. The door was locked all night. Who could have done this?" They erased the number, tried to forget, until the 3rd morning. 3. Now it was in the living room, closer to the stairs. Daddy Pig grew irritated. "If this is a prank, it's getting old." 4th, in the hallway. 5. On the stairs. The numbers were moving closer to Peppa's bedroom. 1 every night, always a little nearer. On the 6th day, Peppa woke in a cold sweat. Something felt wrong. She looked down. 6 was marked on the floor beside her bed, and next to it, a black smudge, like a hoofprint, but too large. The edges were cracked and jagged. Peppa showed it to her parents. Daddy Pig said nothing. Mummy Pig just cleaned everything and threw the chalk away. But it wasn't the chalk that mattered. That night, Peppa didn't sleep. She sat under her blanket and listened. Outside her room, a soft scraping sound, as if something was dragging across the floor. She clutched George. He slept peacefully, like nothing was wrong. In the morning, there was a new marking. On the wall, high up, almost near the ceiling, the number 7, and beneath it, scratched in jagged letters, "You're next." Her parents told her she was imagining things. "Try to relax, Peppa," said Daddy Pig. "It's just your imagination." But that night, it all got worse. She woke up and realized someone was standing by the door, a figure, tall, a shadow, barely visible. Peppa held her breath. It didn't move, but she heard whispers right in her ears, though it had no mouth. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Silence. Then, one step forward, into the room. Peppa pressed herself into the pillow. She wanted to scream, but couldn't. The air was thick, like trying to breathe in syrup. When she opened her eyes again, it was morning. No numbers, no shadow, but on the bathroom mirror, the number 8, and next to it, her hoofprint, only larger, and beneath it, "You're the last." Peppa Pig. The room upstairs. The morning started like any other. The Pig family was having breakfast in the kitchen. Daddy Pig was reading the newspaper, Mummy was pouring tea, George was kicking his legs under the table, chewing toast. But Peppa felt strange. Something in the house wasn't quite right. After breakfast, Peppa went upstairs to get a toy. As she passed the staircase, she stopped. Something had changed. Where the wall used to be above the stairs, there was now another staircase, narrow, old, wooden. She didn't remember it ever being there before. Dust, a faint draft, a flickering light bulb above. The stairs led up to a 3rd floor, but their house never had a 3rd floor. Peppa called out, "Mummy? Daddy?" No answer. George peeked from his room, then quickly shut the door. All day, Peppa tried to ask about the staircase, but her parents kept changing the subject. Daddy talked about the weather. Mummy suggested a walk. George said nothing. When Peppa tried to go up, Mummy gently stopped her and said, "Don't go up there, sweetie. There's nothing there." But that night, Peppa woke up. The house was dark, except for a faint glow coming from the stairs, a steady light from above, as if someone was holding a lantern, and then a sound. Creak, step, pause, and a voice, her voice, software familiar, repeating, "Peppa, Peppa." She got up and walked to the hallway. The staircase was still there, but now it looked fresh, like it had just been built. No dust, no cobwebs. The wood felt damp under her hooves. She started climbing, slow at first, then faster, step, creak, her breath. At the top, a door, old blackened wood, no handle. She reached out and then heard another voice, also hers but off, echoing, distorted. "You wanted to remember," it whispered. "I've been waiting." Peppa froze. She felt something else had followed her up. She turned. Nothing behind her. She touched the door. Inside was a room, empty. Grey floor, uneven walls, a mirror in the corner. But the mirror showed no reflection. She stepped in, and the door behind her was gone. The wall was solid now. Suddenly, a reflection appeared in the mirror. It looked like her, but it didn't move the same way. It stared, then smiled, slowly, widely. It didn't blink. Peppa screamed. In the morning, she woke up in her bed. Sunlight, clinking dishes, Mummy's voice, George playing with his dinosaur. She got up, went to the hallway. The staircase was gone. But when she looked into the bathroom mirror, in the far corner of the reflection, she saw a narrow staircase. And at the top, a girl who looked like Peppa, standing, looking down.
Peppa's Forgotten Walk. The Forest Whispers. One day, Peppa and her friends set out for a walk in the dark forest that began just beyond an old wooden gate, warped and splintered with age. It had always seemed mysterious, but today, something about it felt inviting. No one remembered who suggested going there. It was as if the idea appeared in everyone's head at once. At first, it was all innocent fun. Peppa giggled, George collected pine cones, Susie built a magic circle out of sticks, and Danny Dog told scary stories. They found a clearing full of mushrooms, strange ones, blue, almost like they'd been painted. Trees creaked even though the air was still. Then, a sound, quiet but heavy, like something breathing just behind them, unseen. Peppa froze, a rustle, another. Leaves fell from motionless branches. "Did you hear that?" she whispered. "It's just the wind," Pedro muttered. But wind doesn't growl. The sound came again, low, wet, and with a wheezing edge. George whimpered and clutched her hand. Eyes appeared behind the bushes. Red, not reflecting light, glowing on their own. "It's a monster," Rebecca screamed, and in that instant the forest woke up. A boar, but not like any they'd ever seen. Its fur was black as ash. Its mouth hung open with a long, dripping tongue like a snake's. It didn't run. It tracked them, moving as if it already knew where they'd go. Peppa ran, hearing the screams of her friends. Someone fell, someone cried out, then silence. She was alone, except for the boar's heavy breath, right behind her. She tripped. Her backpack, where? She fumbled in the dark, fingers closing around her toy flashlight. Click. The beam lit up the beast's eyes. It stopped, hissed, and then it laughed. Yes, laughter. Low, broken, like someone else was speaking through it. It lunged, and Daddy Pig burst from the darkness, swinging a burning branch. The boar recoiled but didn't flee. It withdrew, never blinking. Then it vanished into the fog. Peppa didn't sleep that night. The next morning, the sun was shining. Everything seemed normal. But in the yard, fresh hoofprints in the dirt, and in the bushes, an eye, red, watching. The scariest episode of the Peppa Pig cartoon series that never aired on TV, Peppa the Terrible. It was an ordinary night in the world of Peppa Pig. The sky was covered with heavy clouds, the wind howled outside the window, and the family had gathered at home before bed. But something felt off. Peppa felt a strange uneasiness. She couldn't fall asleep and had been restless all evening. It seemed like the shadows in the corners of the room were moving, and the sounds coming from outside were growing louder and more sinister. The next day, the family went for a walk in the forest. As they ventured deeper into the woods, everything around them grew darker, even though the sun hadn't yet set. Peppa suddenly noticed a strange tree with long, grotesquely stretched out branches. As she came closer, she saw ancient symbols carved into the bark, symbols no one had noticed before. When Peppa touched the tree's bark, a strange shiver ran through her body. Her head began to spin and her vision blurred. She collapsed to the ground and lost consciousness. George and their parents rushed to her side, but when she raised her head, her eyes no longer looked the same. There was something cold, empty, and alien in them. From that moment, everything began to change. At night, Peppa started speaking in a strange, incomprehensible language. Her laughter became sharp and brittle, like claws scraping against metal. She no longer played with George and avoided her friends. Instead, she would sit alone for hours, staring into the void. Soon, other animals began to disappear. The first was Susie Sheep. Then no one could find Pedro. No one suspected that every night when the village fell asleep, Peppa would leave her house and transform into something completely unnameable. Her body would stretch, her limbs becoming thin like the branches of that very tree, and her face no longer resembled a cute pink pig. It twisted into a horrifying mask that could terrify even the bravest soul. She would sneak into the homes of her sleeping friends and lead them into the forest. What happened to them next, no one knew. They simply vanished without a trace. One night, George noticed Peppa quietly leaving the house. He secretly followed her and saw her heading toward the strange tree. He wanted to stop her, but when she turned around, her eyes gleamed in the darkness with an inhuman light. In the morning, he told their parents what he had seen, but they didn't believe him. They thought it was just a bad dream. But the village was growing quieter. More and more residents were vanishing, and Peppa seemed to be growing taller, her shadow longer, and her laughter more terrifying. Now only those who manage to hide remain in the village, and no one dares to cross the forest that surrounds it. Everyone knows that deep within those woods, near that strange tree, lives something no longer quite Peppa Pig, but something far darker and far more terrifying.